Oh, hey, look, I got invited to a thing,
You
a
did?
video call.
Again?
Yeah, it just popped up a little notification on my phone here.
Oh, yeah, my phone is silly like that sometimes. So like last week it invited me to a video to a podcast call that we did like 2.5 weeks ago. It invited me to that at 6:40 in the morning on a random Monday, and I'm like,
Hmm.
are we? So it was 6:40
Something I
in
don't
it was
know.
6:40 in the morning, and I was like, wait, are we podcasting right now? Because like I mean, obviously we weren't, but
Yeah.
in I'm just waking up manic state, like shit. All right, I'll go podcast right now, and I jumped on and nothing was happening. It was laughing at me.
So my buddy, who I got into soccer about 2 years ago, uh, and is like a die hard. Like it's crazy how quickly he jumped onto the sport and just absolutely loves the Sounders and all that. He says his final four is France, which is bold, Brazil, Belgium, and Costa Rica. So he
Huh?
has France over Germany, which I mean is an upset, but not of mammoth proportions. But he has Costa Rica over the Dutch.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I couldn't see it; they did look beatable, but oh, fuck, man, that's a big claim.
I'm gonna get a little jealous of Costa Rica if they make the semifinals. To be honest.
Yeah, yeah. That was my dream, man. My dream was like, we're gonna pull this thing off. We should be saving this. It's so hard. Where's your friend? Why aren't we podcasting?
We're live right now.
Yeah, but I
Just
mean,
just say
do
shit.
you want to start? Do you want me to intro and we'll just bring him in when he comes in, or do you want to edit it in later?
Whatever's fine. We didn't even have an intro last week. It didn't matter.
No, we totally didn't.
We literally opened with what Josh told me to open with, which
Which was
whenever
gold. I'm so
when-
glad you did.
whenever people like jokingly tell me to do things, I do them anyway, and it works out great.
It works out great. No, and leaving the part in where he says, "I want this to be the intro" was great. Like that's because I'll admit I go back and listen to our stuff sometimes.
I don't, mostly because I listen to it like twice through in editing.
Yeah. I could see that.
Oh, we finally got all those stats back. Cool. The uh, the one with Remy wasn't showing up all the stats from the first day, so it looked low on Podbean, but now they're back.
Oh, good.
So, um,
Uh, Matt Doyle. I don't know if you've been on Twitter in the last hour, but Matt Doyle says if you're still in the day after USMNT doldrums, I can't recommend watching Rafa blow it for Mexico enough. It really, really picks me up.
Matt Doyle's been getting a lot of shit on RMLS lately, by the way, and I think for
It's
good
like
reason.
it's on the up climb, right? Like, I go ahead. Do you think it's for a good reason?
Yeah, I do, because
Let's
he's
hear it.
very anti-Klinsman.
I get that. I think more importantly, I feel like he might be getting some shit for being kind of clickbaity, but I legitimately think that he holds the opinions that he puts out. I don't think that he is one of the guys that's making controversial statements to get his point of view out there. I think he holds those controversial viewpoints.
Yeah, no, he does, and there are certainly people on Twitter that made me pretty mad yesterday, and I just unfollowed them. That were basically like in my mind they were just trying to corner the hot soccer take market,
Yeah.
which uh, which makes me mad because they should know better.
Well, give me an example. Let's call some people out.
So, um, this one guy, I don't know his real name, but his Twitter handle is like Il Generale. He's a Fire fan. He started following me once I wrote that when I wrote that uh, Power Rankings of Sadness article where I ranked the 5 worst MLS
Oh yeah,
franchises,
yeah.
and the Fire were at the bottom.
That's a great article.
and thank you. And he was like, and he agreed with me about all the reasons I think the Fire were the worst. Um, so he was happy with me then, but I got unhappy with him yesterday because he was talking. It's not just that he was talking shit about how the U.S. played in the World Cup, which I guess you can do, because if you look at the overall, they won one, lost two, and drew one, and like that in a vacuum doesn't look great. But you look at who they played,
Totally.
and you look at like, and if you line up, because here's what I've been doing in my head. It's like if you line up the roster of United States and how much those people make versus the roster of every team that they played and how much those guys make and the clubs that they are on, the United States should be the United States are underdogs in every game on that basis. They're hypothetically less talented than all those teams, and they showed themselves well. And there's also the Manaus factor, which I think was a little bit understated.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the whole having to play in 90-degree heat with 70% humidity. It's also they had to take these malaria and typhoid shots while going into the jungle, and those things kind of kill your body. Like no one. I have a couple of people who have been to the Amazon. My aunt and another friend of mine who's like, yeah, you feel pretty sick for like a week. And so they didn't look great again in the Portugal game, which is fine because I'm sure the Portuguese team didn't look great either. But then you have to go and play another game against Germany, and you're still feeling the effects of those shots because you're basically being handed like small portions of malaria and typhoid to prevent yourself from getting the full-blown versions of those diseases,
Right.
And so you feel like shit playing against Germany, who's, a pretty good soccer team. And
they're decent, I mean.
and yeah, no shit, they lost 1-0. So
yeah, and on top of that, especially Americans with our poor geography skills, Brazil doesn't look that big in the scheme of things until you overlay it onto a map of the U.S. and you realize, take everything that you just said between the jungle heat and humidity, malaria pills, and the fact that we're playing all these games in a row, and then add in the travel that, was the equivalent of, like, I feel like they said it's been 2 months since somebody made this comparison, but I feel like it was like the U.S. team is going to start in Houston, fly to Montreal, fly back to Houston, fly to Chicago, fly back to Houston, and then something a little bit closer. I can't remember exactly the comparison, but the distance between the base camp, Manaus, and where do we play? Was it Recife? Is that where we played after that?
Recife, yeah.
Yeah. Is massive. I mean, it's a lot of travel distance in addition to all those other factors, and to play the Germans 1-0 was fucking awesome. Like, yeah, it's a loss, and all of the Johnny-come-latelys or just straight up don't care about soccer in my office could not figure out why I was so happy that we lost that day. It's not that I was happy that we lost, but in spite of losing, I was having an awfully good day, and that was a difficult concept to explain. Like, okay, not only are we through the group that no one gave us credit to get out of, like literally the most important analysts in our own country are saying we're not going to do this, and we do that, and then we only lose by a goal to the Germans. That's fucking progress. I don't care what anybody wants to say about it. That's an incredible result in my mind. And playing Belgium the way that we did, as painful and as much, I mean, just like the Portugal game where it's like you can look at it and be like, fuck, we were so close. Like we were 30 seconds away from, from beating Portugal and moving on after 2 games and potentially winning the group. Who knows what happens in the next German game? I subscribe to chaos theory. If we beat Portugal, things change. Attitudes are different. We play different players. We rest different people. Who knows how that German game goes if we win? And, I also feel like if we get an extra minute of stoppage time, there's a real possibility of a goal against Belgium. You know? Klinsmann was clearly furious, and I fully believe that he had every right to be. If you go back and look at every other game that was played into extra time in that round, like, I mean, they were getting
3 minutes at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
3 minutes.
I was anticipating a Women's World Cup scenario when the U.S. played Brazil 3 years ago, and they got an equalizer in the 123rd minute. Megan
Yeah,
Rapinoe to Abby Wambach, which was
yeah.
great. It was fantastic. It was awesome. So
Yeah.
I was thinking that was going to happen, but
Yeah, and with a goal being scored in the second 15 minutes, a shitload of time wasting right at the end by the Belgians, who, to their credit, had not done any of that throughout the game.
yeah,
You know, and to the point where the ref was, was essentially threatening yellow cards for time wasting. Like they were being warned, but he didn't take that into account and add extra time. I mean, if we can have 4 minutes go to 5 minutes because Zusi slowly walked off the field,
yeah, seriously.
like a board can show 4 minutes and then get changed to 5 because of a slow sub happening simultaneously as the time's already been announced.
Right.
I feel like we could have gotten 2 out of that. And yeah, it sounds like sour grapes and it's a tough loss, but man, we were good in that last 15 minutes.
We were, and that's what Doyle's frustrated about, is because we can play like that without being down 1-0 or 2-0 or 2-1 or whatever.
Yes.
And I totally agree. I feel like we could have definitely taken it to Belgium for more of the game than we did. I mean, Yedlin was, oh my god. You're not going to have Yedlin for long, Pete.
After the games that we've seen, particularly the Belgium game coming in the 30th minute, I will be psyched if we have him through the end of the season. If we can keep him through, the playoffs, because I legitimately don't know that that's going to happen. There's a lot of talk that goes on, and you can never really believe everything that is said, and there's a lot of grains of sand. But both Adrian Hanauer and DeAndre Yedlin have said the goal is for him to be in Seattle this year, that it would take an absolutely massive, payment to change that. But that's not unreasonable right now.
Right.
You have Rio Ferdinand tweeting about him. He's on the map.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And yeah, there's some serious concern among the Sounders fan base that he's fielding calls right now that he's going to be gone in the international window, and that we are not going to even keep him. Now, to be honest, I think that the Sounders would be okay. We have depth this year like I can't believe, and we'll get to that obviously when we talk about the league games this week, if we talk about them at all. I'm not sure how much we're actually going to cover that, but if DeAndre Yedlin takes a payment and is gone tomorrow, in my mind, Brad Evans is the starting right back. We are deeper at mid than we are at wingbacks and fullbacks, and I really think that in his absence, Brad Evans has locked down that position. Now, he stays at home more than Yedlin does, but he has good crosses. He'll throw an overlapping run. I think that we would be okay. It's just that, honestly, at this point, after the way that we saw him play in the Cup, I would like to see that happen now. If DeAndre Yedlin stays through the rest of the year, I'd like to put Brad Evans at right back and put Yedlin out on the wing. Let's do it.
But he can play right back. I mean, he held Belgium for most of that game as a right back, which no one thought he was going to do. I didn't think he was going to do that. I saw him get torched to get by New England, and I thought Belgium has more pace than New England, but I guess not.
No, he just learned. That's the best thing you can say about that kid, is that I've never seen him regress. I've seen him make massive, massive mistakes, but he doesn't make them again. He'll make different ones. He'll get burned in different ways. He'll make silly plays, but he learns very, very quickly. I mean, I've watched this kid develop over, 19 months now? I was on the phone with my Sounders friends watching him in the preseason tournament Desert Diamond Cup, and I was like, this kid is going to be our pickup of the year. Bringing him out of Akron at this point in his career And he looked very raw back then, and he was getting beat on defense, and his first touch was terrible, and his crosses. That's honestly the thing that impressed me the most in the Belgium game was his crosses, because they were god-awful a year ago. That was like, when you talked about DeAndre Yedlin, it was like, man, the kid's got pace, and he's got heart, and he wants to make these overlapping runs, but he's really suspect on defense, and the only reason that he's doing, like, the reason he was starting last year is because he was so fast he could make up for the constant defensive mistakes he was making. But his crosses were terrible, and, his just kind of vision for the field was not great. And the amount that he's changed in a year is insane. Like, obviously just playing in the Cup is a big deal, but the way that he performed against the Belgians is just like, it's not the same kid. And I loved him a year ago. At that raw, just kind of like pacey talent, he was amazing. And now it's like, man, I feel like he's 25. Like, it's crazy how fast it happened.
About this point last year, I compared him to a poor man's Andy Nahar.
There you go.
At this point, I think Andy Nahar is a poor man's DeAndre Yedlin. It's crazy how much, when DeAndre Yedlin first came on against Portugal a week and a half ago, I was
only a week and a half ago. Good Lord.
I know, right? I was flummoxed. I was like, we're putting on Yedlin? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then he puts in a cross and where we score the almost game-winning goal.
Yeah, at the time it's the go-ahead goal.
And he plays great against Germany, and he plays fantastic against Belgium for 90 minutes, literally 90 minutes. And I'm sold. At the end of the Belgium game, I was all like, DeAndre Yedlin, and it was awesome. And there are a lot of great things about that. One of them being, he's one of those kids that we talk on and on and on about coming through the American soccer player development system, because a lot of the young guys like Julian Green, Fabian Johnson, Timmy Chandler, Terrence Boyd, most of them did not come up through America, obviously. They came up elsewhere. And so having those guys play well for the national team is great, but it's not really indicative of how well our development system is going. With guys like Yedlin, there's an example. And
yeah,
another great thing, which is kind of weird, because usually the notion is if someone's going to pay a ridiculous amount for the 150 minutes that he played in the World Cup, it's not a great sample size, and teams shouldn't do this. If they're being reasonable, they shouldn't overpay for DeAndre Yedlin. But there are a lot of unreasonable soccer teams out there who will definitely pay an unreasonable amount for DeAndre Yedlin. And you almost got to take that offer if you're MLS, but the other thing that you're trying to do as MLS is capitalize on the success of those guys, like Yedlin and Dempsey. You want to keep them, and Beasler and Gonzalez. Gonzalez, who, when he started against Germany, I was like, oh, Jesus, we're going to lose 5-0. And that didn't happen. He played great.
Fully agree. I was super concerned when he was put in, and I was like, oh, this is the worst thing we could do. But clearly he's come back from injury. He's in good shape, and between Germany and Belgium, he had games of his career.
Yeah. And so MLS is kind of caught between a weird dichotomy where they could sell these guys for unreasonable amounts of money to European teams, or they could keep them, pay them more. Gonzalez is already getting DP money. Beasler's on his way. Yedlin's on his way. You guys don't really have a DP spot, but I hear Martins might be on his way out, so you might have one open up.
You watch your mouth.
Hey, that's just the rumors I'm hearing. And would you rather have Yedlin for, say, I don't know, $3 million a year, or Martins right now?
Can we make that decision at the end of the season? Can I have both?
No, because people are going to make offers for Yedlin right now. So your front office is going to have to make that decision right now.
Yeah, you're right, because God, Oba's looked so good this year, but you're right. If my choice is keeping Oba for the rest of the year and wondering what his age and health is going to be like over the next year or two versus keeping DeAndre Yedlin in the league and on my team for the next 3 years, then yeah, I'll take Yedlin every time because we do still have Dempsey. Lamar Nagel's gotten better. Kenny Cooper's great off the bench. Barrett. I mean, we've got options. None of them are Oba. None of them will be a like-for-like replacement. But we would have to change our tactics. I mean, if you make DeAndre Yedlin a DP, you have to say we're building this team around him like we build it around Ozzie Alonso and Clint Dempsey. And suddenly you start looking at, is this a 4-3-3 team? Is this, like, where does he play? What are we doing? It does change the whole dynamic, but I still think that I take that over Oba just knowing his age and health issues.
Now, speaking of 4-3-3 teams, my friend Daniel has joined us.
Hey.
He's a Dutch supporter.
Yeah.
They like to play the 4-3-3.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll break now. So Daniel, I can introduce you to what the hell we're doing.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
this is the podcast I do sometimes.
Nice.
You're Dutch, obviously.
Yeah, you could say that. I was born there.
Tell us about your soccer fandom and stuff, so Pete knows what to ask about.
Yeah, sure. Well, I know I started playing when I was 12, and I think it was around the 2002 World Cup when I started like getting crazy into it. And it was after that when I started really watching English football and supporting Arsenal, because that was when Bergkamp played there. And being Dutch and watching that, I had to go side with that team. And it just really went from there. Ultimately, I think Henry was there too, doing amazing things. And yeah, that was really where it started. And then I've also gotten into the Dutch league. Since I lived there, I branched out. But the Dutch league is always so dirty.
In what way? Like foul-ridden or just like...
Foul-ridden, like incompetent refs. It's all just... And I mean...
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, are you an MLS fan?
Yeah. I mean, it's cool though because you have really small teams who play in like little towns, and then they play Ajax in Amsterdam in like enormous stadiums, and they're completely like, well, they're not out of their league. They are legitimately in the league, but they look totally ridiculous, and so that's always been entertaining because often you get like the little guys to upset teams like Ajax and Feyenoord, so.
So did you keep up with Josie while he was at Alkmaar?
No, not at all, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, I never paid attention to what AZ did, really. Only when they were, because I know they used to have Dick Advocaat as the coach, and that was when I was watching them.
That's like a famous Dutch guy, right?
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah, he used to be the Dutch coach.
Okay, I have to ask, what the hell is going on with your hair? It used to be so big. Like,
oh yeah, no,
what did you do to it?
I got
you got a ponytail. I see. Okay.
It's too hot. It's too hot for that shit right now.
Oh,
It's
dude,
like-
tell me about it.
Daniel, it's like 70 degrees here in Minnesota. How is it hot in Iowa?
I don't know, but it is. It's weird. Midwest weather is not something I'm used to.
Okay.
Just storms.
Were you in North Carolina though? It would be way hotter.
True, and I do the same there.
Yeah, that's.
Are you in Des Moines?
I'm actually in Cedar Rapids.
Oh, okay.
It's somewhere in Iowa, honestly. I have no idea.
Are there actual rapids there?
There are actually. There's a river, the Cedar River.
Huh.
Yep. Which is flowing rapidly and actually overflowing too.
Well, I gotta say, Daniel, I'm really glad to hear of your strong Dutch connections between your heritage and your living there, because I am the first guy that will call out Americans for supporting other nations when they have no connection. It just pisses me off to no end when you have a good product and a local option.
Yeah.
Did I tell you about the 4 17-year-old kids at the movie theater showing of this?
Can I just ask, are we in the podcast? I have a hard time.
We're sort of filtering in and out. I'll keep some of this. I will delete other things.
You edit it after.
I edit it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Yeah. No one watches this live because otherwise it would be a mess.
It would be a
Right.
mess.
Right. Okay.
Excuse me.
So are you a pure U.S. supporter then, Pete?
Yeah, so I am. Even though I'm a little bit older than Ian, I am kind of the next generation of fan, which is that my interest in the sport started with the 2010 World Cup, and happened to coincide with the same summer that I moved to Seattle. So, I went from being like a serious hockey fan and a sometime NFL fan to watching the 2010 World Cup and really getting excited about it. And then just, a month and a half later, I was in Seattle, and a close friend from college days was like, "Hey man, you got to come to a Sounders game," and that was it for me. I mean, I've been a 4-year season ticket holder, and it was quick. So yeah, it's all American soccer for me. And the more that I got to understand the community and realize that there were people my age in my city that had never even been to fucking Europe that were like all about like, I'm gonna support. Like I went to lunch last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, just before the Cup started. And no, it was during the first games. The U.S. hadn't played their first game yet, but I think it was the opening day. So it's Brazil and Croatia, exactly. And I go to this little lunch cafe, go grab a sandwich, and the girl's wearing a Brazil jersey. And I know that she's American, and unless she's had some sort of travel, so I asked her, I'm like, "So Brazil, huh?" And she's like, "Yeah, man, they're my team." And I'm like, you know that your country's in the Cup, right? Like, I get it if you're Canadian and you're just going to pick somebody that's like, fun to watch, or maybe you like the style that they play, or you like their particular stars. Maybe you're in love with Neymar or whatever. But you live in America. You're clearly American. We've had conversations before. What's the deal? And she's like, I like watching them, and the U.S. isn't very good. And that's what kills me. It's that attitude that exists in this country of like, I won't watch MLS because EPL is clearly better. Why would I watch an inferior product? I don't support the U.S. in the World Cup because I like the way that Italy plays. Like, it drives me up a wall. I get maybe being a dual supporter. I get, enjoying the English league because it's the highest, the peak of football. But it just kills me that that Euro snobbery exists.
Now, Daniel, as a Euro snob,
but with strong connections to what he supports, you know.
And to be fair, the 45 minutes of MLS that I made you watch, you were excited about. So.
Yeah, I was a little drunk too, but no, it was good.
Hey man, that's how we do it.
It was the second half. Actually, I tell this story a lot about the second half when I brought a Dutch guy over to watch the second half of New York versus DC, and sort of converted him, or at least made him say that MLS was pretty good. So
I don't remember that, but okay. No, I do remember watching Henry in that game.
Yeah. Yeah, you remember when there was a free kick at the end that Henry could have taken, but Roy Miller took it instead?
Oh yeah, it was such a waste. Yeah.
Yeah. And to think, Roy Miller went to the World Cup and Henry did not.
Yeah, that's right. He's hung up his international boots.
Would he have made it?
Yeah, would France have taken him?
Because he was part of that French Revolution back 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, he's had some really bad World Cups too. Yeah, I mean, where everyone just sort of failed. Yeah.
I mean, he's also like he's old enough to only be a keeper in the World Cup at this point. Like,
yeah.
Well, when Cameroon made the quarterfinals in 1990, Roger Milla was 38.
That's Cameroon though. Like, I feel like the French talent pool is pretty big.
Yeah, that's true. You gotta give the young guns a chance.
I mean, I look at teams like this is a close to home example for me, but like Colombia and Nigeria. Those teams have so much talent that they were able to pass up on guys like Freddie Montero and Obafemi Martins, guys that have a long history of scoring goals.
Yeah, Nigeria could have used Oba Martins though.
Yeah, they could. Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm happy. He's been here having what he called his own World Cup, and it's been fantastic. He's been just a machine. But no, Freddie Montero surprised me. You know, he goes and plays in Portugal and scores like I don't know, 15 goals in his first 14 appearances, or just this insane tear, and he doesn't even go to the Colombian camps. Like, he's not even being looked at because they're that deep. You know, they have so much talent that a kid who's playing on a Champion League team is not a starting striker and scoring all these goals isn't even getting looked at because there's enough talent and depth. So, you know, that's what I want to see for this country. Back to your earlier point, Ian, is that choice between keeping the young stars here or taking the money to send them elsewhere. It's like, what is better for the league? Is it better to keep them here and try to shed that idea of being a retirement or a development league and keep them here and build the product here and have those, you know, players like Yedlin who are getting all these sponsorships and getting noticed at the World Cup? Is it better to keep him here, or is it better to take the $5 million? Because in the crazy rules of MLS salary cap, you know, single entity, we're only going to get, I don't know, 500,000 of the special allocation dollars, but we get like $4.5 million that we're allowed to use for academies and development and physio and all that stuff. Like, there's all these rules about what we can use that money for, and the majority of it isn't for player salary, it's for development. So is it better for the league as a whole and for the team to keep him here and have a great product and have a young rising star stay here, or to take the huge payout and put it into other young rising stars?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one that, Daniel, I'd like to get your perspective on, because I have my own biases on who I think played well on a national team based on who played in MLS and who didn't. You don't really have those biases, and you watch most, if not all, of our national team's games, right?
Yeah, I've caught most of them. Yeah.
So who are your like top 5 U.S. players this World Cup?
Dempsey is totally number one.
Okay.
But he's not really a youth player these days anymore.
Yeah, but it's just in general.
But he was a really strong captain, and then Tim Howard.
Obviously.
Yeah, Tim Howard. Somebody should sign him, huh? Get him up to the top league.
How about all those memes about Tim Howard yesterday?
Yeah.
That was awesome, right?
I was glad to see how much love he got.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good to really see him perform well, too, after like he fell out of favor at United. Because I remember when he was like their big signing over the summer, and it was like, yeah, this American's going to go play for Manchester United.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
That was a big fucking deal at the time.
But he just, like, I guess it was like in some cup somewhere where he like just didn't have it, and then he was totally just out of it with Sir Alex. But
and then he goes on to do great things at Everton. I mean, suddenly Everton moves from, you know, mid-table. Were they 4 or 5 this year?
5. They're in Europa League.
They finished 5. Okay.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, man. So he was part of a revival for that team. That's incredible.
Yeah, and Yedlin too was really impressive.
Yeah, we were talking about him earlier.
That's amazing. That he can just come in on that kind of platform.
Guess how much he's making right now at Seattle?
This is gonna be good. Unbiased. This will be good.
Like $3 million?
He's making $92,000 a year at Seattle.
Wow.
$92,000 a year.
Wow, I was pretty off.
So he comes in under our homegrown rules.
Yeah.
Meaning that he did not develop anywhere else, like we were talking about with Julian Green and some of our young German Americans. He is purely an American product. Grew up in Seattle, went to high school here, was part of the Sounders Academy, went and played at Akron, which is a great soccer school, and then we brought him back, and yeah, so he's still on a homegrown salary, which is $92,000 a year.
Which is not. Wow.
And so just going to the World Cup, just being accepted to the team, like doubled his salary, because just making the team, you get like $100,000 bonus, and then
making it out of the group is another big bonus.
Huge. That's a big bonus for him. For the other guys, it's not that big, but for him, it was probably another double or triple of his salary. So he went from 92 to probably 400 this year, just on his World Cup performance. And now he's going to make a stupid amount no matter where he goes. Seattle or otherwise, he's going to make a lot of money.
Which is exciting. All right, so Dempsey, Howard, Yedlin, who's next?
Everyone was saying that shit, what's the guy's name with Beckerman? Like should have played. And what I saw in the other games, he looked really good.
Yeah, I loved Beckerman.
But I haven't really seen him enough to really gauge appropriately. And I don't know. Everyone's saying Josie would have been great, but I've never really seen him perform. But
He was the key to our offense. When he went down, Michael Bradley was sort of out of position.
Yeah.
And so was Clint Dempsey.
Yeah.
You know, we don't play Clint Dempsey as the lone striker up top, whereas in the Belgium game, as Matt Doyle called it, a 4-6-0. Yeah, it completely changed our strategy, especially, and that's when you go back and you look at Klinsmann and you look at the complaints about roster selection before the Cup. And of course, you know, hindsight is 20/20, but you know,
yeah. That's the one thing he messed up on, is bringing in Timmy Chandler and not bringing in Eddie Johnson or Terrence Boyd.
Absolutely.
Eddie Johnson is Eddie Johnson still playing?
Yeah, he was supposed to go to the World Cup.
He was a major part of our qualification team. So basically he went and floundered in England, and the Sounders took a risk on him and paid him very little his first couple of years because he was, you know, kind of a risk. He was not playing that well. So he comes back to MLS after, you know, he was the golden child with Sporting Kansas City, or the Wizards back then, and goes to England, has a bad time of it, comes back, Sounders take a risk. He looks great for a couple of years, and he is a major part of the 2013 qualification scheme. You know, scored some big game winners against good teams, and
scored
just
the
looked
winner
like,
against Mexico, scored the 2-0 goal against Panama, a beautiful goal, by the way.
Yeah,
And,
he was right in it, and when the roster was announced, he wasn't even in the 30, much less the 23, and it was a big surprise. Now, he made a poor decision and went to a team that didn't have the... Whoa, I'm getting there. Went to a team that didn't have the formation or tactics or service to keep playing him the way that he had played in Seattle. You know, they left him on an island instead of allowing him to have... You know, I mean, well, they didn't. I mean, I don't know.
The point is, he struggled at my DC United this year and was left off. And,
he made a decision
it made me sad.
He made a decision to leave a playoff team. Yeah, to leave a playoff team.
To go to another playoff team.
Well, this year they weren't a playoff team when he moved.
Well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
They were a trophy-winning team, though.
They did win some hardware.
They won more. Yes. The team that he went to won more trophies in 2013 than the team that he left.
That's 100% accurate. That's 100% accurate.
Right,
but so he fell out of favor with Klinsmann, and all of a sudden wasn't on the team. And no one knows why we didn't take Terrence Boyd. But what it comes down to is that we don't have a replacement for Josie. And neither of those guys are a true like for like. They don't have all the same skill set, but we don't have a big target forward that can do anything like that. So instead, we put Dempsey up there and left him by himself and let him try to create magic, who's much better as a withdrawn forward or even a center attacking mid. And
that's how Seattle uses him pretty much.
Absolutely.
And it works out great.
Yeah.
They put him, I mean, basically the notion was, and it was going to work, was that they were going to use Bradley as Bradley's being used in Toronto, which is behind Jermaine Defoe and Gilberto. And they were going to use Dempsey as Seattle uses him, which is supporting Oba Martins. Both of Defoe and Martins are sort of like for likes for Josie, and they're going to use Josie at the very top, and that was going to work great. It worked great against Nigeria, and then Josie played 20 minutes of the World Cup, and then he went down. We had no one for him. Okay, so Dempsey, Howard, Yedlin, Beckerman, your fifth guy that impressed the Dutchman.
Michael Bradley, he actually played in Holland for a while too.
He did.
Generally, he was pretty strong as like a holding midfielder.
Now that's interesting. Because a lot of and this is why I wanted you on, because I figured your opinions would differ from those who watch American soccer a lot and get disillusioned for bad reasons. I thought Bradley played well against Portugal, and then I came home and looked on RMLS, and everyone was eviscerating him, and I did not understand why. Well, I did, because he missed a really open...
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't like really a clinical finisher by any means, but Yeah.
on his job.
I mean, honestly, he's not supposed to be.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
not supposed to be a clinical finisher. I feel like we put him into a couple of different roles, and we're disappointed that he didn't do both of them simultaneously. Like he got trashed on for not being creative enough, and then he got trashed on for not being defensive enough, and it's tough. Like, you know, I fully agree with the idea that he played better than the general reaction. I think he had some poor moments in all of the games. I think the Belgium game was actually his best game.
Yeah, by far.
You know,
he's the one who created the green goal.
Take that away. Still his best game.
Yeah.
Yeah, take
He
away
also-
the goal. The first 90 minutes, before we even go into extra time, it's still his best game, and we're getting outworked the whole time. But yeah, he didn't have a breakout performance. He certainly wasn't. I wouldn't put him in my top 5, which it is good to hear, you know, that bias. But I wouldn't put him in the bottom 5 either.
Yeah.
You know, I think he was just fine. I think he was doing everything that was asked of him. I still will point to tactics and substitutions and, you know, formations as a much larger role in where we ended up than any one individual performance that's not named Chris Wondolowski.
Now, Daniel, I'm optimistic.
Yes,
I'm an optimistic person by heart. You know that.
generally. Yeah.
And I take a lot of positives from this World Cup. Should I?
Totally. Yeah, we made it through the group of death. You know, I thought that in itself was an achievement. That Portugal game too was a really impressive display.
Yeah.
Just the fact that we were so close to winning, and I still really can't believe that we didn't even. So, I mean,
It is kind of crazy to think, like,
America never does that. America, like, okay,
yeah, it's usually
we usually are the ones who score at the end, not the other team.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my God, we scored and we drew against that team at the very end. Like,
Yeah.
you know, to be beating Portugal in extra time, and yeah, I mean, yeah, man, that's awesome. It sucks it didn't go down the way that it did, but I mean, I'd say the same. Ian and I are both in very similar fragile emotional states. It's been just over 24 hours.
I got a lot of my tears out yesterday when I drank some red wine and talked to Kelsey too, and watched the Office finale. And
Did you light some candles and have a bath and
it was at that point that I switched from like being sad for myself to being sad for Chris Wondolowski. I was just, and I texted you, Daniel, last night. I was like, I've been an MLS fan for years. I've watched Wondolowski his entire career. He and Beckerman totally deserved these opportunities, and they made the most of them, and they both deserve to be at the World Cup, and they both played pretty well. And I'm gutted for Wando because he's such a great guy. He's one of my favorite good guys in MLS, even if he plays for like a bad boy team or whatever. That's not his fault. But
he's
plays
the only
well
guy who's not. He's the only guy on that team who's not.
Well, I like John Bush too. I think he's a pretty nice guy too. But and it was just to know that he's gonna think about that basically for the rest of his life.
I mean, look, let's be honest. That situation is why he was on the plane.
Yes.
He was on the plane because 99 times he scores that goal. That's who Chris Wondolowski is. He's a poacher. He's a guy who somehow is magically in the right place at the right time on side, and that's who he is. We put him on the plane because of his ability to constantly do that, because we knew if we needed a goal, we were going to put him out there, probably with Josie, probably pull Clint Dempsey or somebody else, put him out there with Josie, let Josie be the guy up top, and let him just get a garbage goal in garbage time. And for him to miss it, is just heartbreaking. And
I've seen him score that goal so many times for San Jose.
So many times. He scored that goal against my team so many times.
And it's heartbreaking because it's just because you love seeing those MLS moments being played out at the World Cup.
Totally.
And that was what was happening, and it just And by the way, the person who created that chance, I'm surprised we haven't talked about him yet. Jermaine Jones just had the single. Yeah. Oh my goodness! I did not realize he could play that well.
If we had gone after Daniel had finished up, if we had gone for our own top 5, Jermaine Jones was number 1 list on my list. He's the man.
Yeah, he's a beast.
I mean, we have 2 different players play through broken noses.
Oh yeah.
The breathing alone, the breathing.
Neither of them use masks.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Ignore the pain. Ignore the pain from just it getting brushed, but the breathing situation alone with a broken nose as a professional athlete running around in jungle weather is insane.
Yeah.
And then when Dempsey does it, and then he does the extra badass thing of scoring with his crotch.
Yeah, that's what they said in the bar where I was watching it. Dempsey scored with his dick. That's the most American thing ever.
He fucked that goal. That's what he did. He fucked that ball into that net, and we should have won that goddamn game. That was the greatest storyline ever.
Yeah.
Cool. And created on an amazing run into the box with a sweet cross by DeAndre
Yedlin. Yeah. I know I'm glad we're doing this because I feel so much better about our team.
Oh yeah, man. I honestly and this we'll see how Daniel reacts to this. I legitimately believe that we could make the semis in 2018, and if we host in 2022, I think we can win it. I think the bump we get from being the host and 8 years of development and where we are as a nation and the way that this country is going for this sport, I legitimately think we could have a shot at being in the final in 2022.
Because you have to realize, our development academies are just now getting to the point where they need to be to pump out legitimate talent like DeAndre Yedlin and Josie Altidore. Who's like either a couple months older or younger than me. I don't remember which. Yeah. And Matt Beasler and Jeff Cameron and Omar Gonzalez and all those guys. That's the first wave. The next wave
the kids that are 16 right now, the ones that are in high school that are getting picked up for the academies, they've been playing not high school ball. They've been playing, select ball, and they've been playing in good teams. But they're going to be 24 in 8 years, and those guys are going to be the ones that are going to be the future. And so again, that goes back to the how do we handle our situation in this league?
Yeah, and especially because you have to consider that the TV deal next year is humongous, and so MLS has a lot of hypothetical money to play with, and the CBA, they better fucking figure out the CBA so we don't miss any time next year. That would make me really mad.
Furious. As a hockey fan, I cannot handle a lockout in soccer. I can't handle that.
And that would destroy all the momentum instantly.
Totally.
And
I don't know what these things are, but they sound serious.
Okay, so basically what happens, and it's good that you asked this because I'm sure there are a lot of other people out there who have there are a lot of newbies. There are like 4,000 new RMLS subscribers in the last month.
There's a huge bump. Huge.
Now we're approaching 25,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what Ian's talking about is the collective bargaining agreement. It is the agreement between the players and the league and the owners of pretty much everything: contract rights, salary agreements, salary caps, and it's really all to do with the financials and the contracts. And what keeps happening in America is they will hold each other hostage where this 5 or 7 or 8 year deal that's in place, in the year that it expires, instead of just getting together and negotiating well ahead of time, they keep trying to be the stronger position.
And usually it's the owners who are trying to get more out of the revenue pie It happened in the NFL. It happened big time in the NBA because the NBA Players Union was kind of shitty, and it happened in the NHL a couple of times once they lost an entire season. Um, and the only reason I came back to the NHL is because my team won the Stanley Cup the very next season, and it's
Okay.
it's something for all y'all out there to pay attention to, and hopefully they get that figured out because the TV deal is awesome. The World Cup boost to attendance is going to happen next year. We're getting 2 new great teams.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that the MLS is at a place where teams can be created, too. Like that's something that doesn't really happen in leagues in Europe anymore, as far as I know.
Yeah, we've got there are so many.
It's kind of interesting.
There are so many areas out there that need a soccer team. They don't have one yet, and a lot of them are starting little. Like Nashville, there's a place in Michigan, or Detroit even. They're starting at the very, very low end, like 4th or 5th division, like it happens in England and all those places in Europe. There's been an interesting development last couple of years where there's like crowdfunded teams, like has happened in Nashville and Grand Rapids, and I think there's a place in Florida now that's also doing it. And there's just teams propping up all over the place to fill all these little holes in the map that still exist. And there's 19 MLS teams, and there's like 10 NASL teams. That's the second division, and there's like going to be, as of next year, 20 third division teams, and those are all the pro teams. And then there's still even little places here, there, everywhere that need to get filled in. Greensboro, Gate City FC started this year, and it looks like they're doing pretty well.
Huh.
They look nice. I'm gonna go watch them once or twice once I move back in a couple weeks.
See, that's what you have to remember as a European fan, is that this country is so much bigger and more populated than anybody in Europe, you know. So instead of having those tiny teams playing in the same league, you know, like you talked about as Ajax, but instead of having that, you have the entire pro league is all in major cities. And then you have huge major cities that are not supported in the pro league, so then they get the lower division. Instead of having somewhere like London that has, 4 top flight, and then they've got 4 development, and then they've got 4 below that, and then 4 below that. They're all spread out, and some teams some cities have multiple levels, but right now, it's growing in this country because we have so many large cities that they can support all the different levels, that maybe they're not ready for an MLS franchise yet, but they can, Sacramento, where I'm originally from, is a great example. Capital of California, over 1 million people in the metro area, and because there are already 3 teams in California, they didn't go straight into MLS, but they're having their first year of a lower division team this year, getting huge support, good product on the field, and I mean, it's growing in this country at astronomical rate because we have so many potential fans. We're not fighting over the small portion of the pie. We have cities that aren't being represented at all. And it's really easy to go in there if there's any sort of soccer presence whatsoever.
And this is I think one of the most underrated aspects of what this World Cup could mean is the clamor for a soccer team in my area. I mean, how many posts have we seen on the MLS subreddit in the last 2 days? Say, all right, I'm a new soccer fan. Where do I go watch? I'm in Milwaukee. I'm in Phoenix. I'm in New Orleans. There's not really a big team near me, and
what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, there's an MLS team relatively close, but 4th division teams are fun too. Support them well enough, they might move up. There's a couple of suitors in Milwaukee. There's a team in New Orleans that our friend of the show's Orangutan goes out to sometimes.
I saw his flare change.
Yeah, it's about that time I gotta change my flare back.
Yeah, I've been waiting, but
this is what I hope the result is a bunch of new teams in those 4th, 3rd, 5th divisions prop up, get supported, stick around, provide stability to the lower leagues, and then maybe they develop academies themselves. That's one way to spread the development net. because it's so fucking hard to cover the entire country of 300 million people and so much area. You know, people will slip through the cracks. Potentially talented soccer players will slip through those cracks, and you know, these little soccer teams that can boost support, boost awareness, can help cover those cracks and help build the national team and help build the support. And you know, we've seen the numbers from this World Cup. A game that started at 4 o'clock on a work day matched to the Portugal game on ESPN. So the two biggest soccer games watched in American history are from this World Cup. One of them was on a Sunday. The other one was on a Tuesday workday.
And I want to remind you that a good portion of the country lives on the West Coast where it was 1 o'clock.
Right, exactly.
1 p.m. on a workday.
And it's not to be too, I don't know, fanboyish, but it's optimistic.
It's a great time.
What do you think, Daniel? What are your thoughts about all these words that I'm saying?
No, I mean, I think that makes sense. But do people just want to get off work? I don't know. But I think it seems, though, like everyone around here, at least, has been really into the games. I mean, I'm supposed to be doing research, but, I mean, we like to watch the game while we research. And, you know, maybe we don't do as much, you know, data processing as we could. But everyone's totally into it. So, but I think, too, that a lot of real soccer playing among, like, the U.S. youth has to just start on the streets. You know, if people are into it, they'll play. But when I see, like, neighborhoods with typical sort of, you know, sports places for the youth to go do whatever they want, it's always like basketball, or, you know, there'll be like a recreation center with a pool and some like picnic benches. But I know, like, where I grew up in the Netherlands, there were always like just little goals set up in parks. And I mean, that just always encouraged people to play, because even if you want to, it's sometimes hard just to find somewhere to start, you know, just to go kick a ball around. And I've definitely seen that, you know, there's enough interest. So I'm wondering if that's going to start actually happening in the States too, where you're going to see more goals, basically, just goalposts set up for people to play in, because that would totally, well, one, it'd be great for me. I'd totally go play all the time, but it would definitely, I think, shape the sport in a new way, sort of, because I mean, that's where you really learn technique too, is playing on the streets, where, you know, spaces are small. That's where we got all our great technical players from as a Dutchman. You know, that's where, like, Robin and Van Persie all got their starts.
And all those Brazilians.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention all of Brazil, essentially.
So you're saying, so the next step then is for little soccer goals to become as ubiquitous in U.S. parks as basketball goals, basketball hoops, baseball diamonds, and
I also think it's got to be a change of kind of, not positioning, but it's got to be a change in the way that the sport is viewed at the youth level, because there are a ton of kids that play soccer in America, right up until high school when they get poached to play basketball, football, or baseball.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, there's this huge movement of, like, kids that just kind of play it. That's what they do on Saturdays. Their parents take them. The coach is a random dad who's never played, who's never coached. You know, one of the big contributors on the MLS subreddit is username Crolla. Yeah. And so he's a youth coach and a coach at a couple of different levels. And he is constantly preaching, like, if you want the sport to grow in this country, go be a coach and do it properly. Get the U.S. soccer, you know, breakdowns of these are the drills you should be running for these ages. These are the tactics you should be using for these ages, so that as a country we have a united soccer identity. I think that's one of the things that, you know, other countries are doing. Yeah, go ahead.
Because guys like Josie, when they grew up, they were coached by a random dad.
Totally.
And I personally, Daniel, we should go coach a youth team when I get back to North Carolina. Or we should coach 2 youth teams. We'll play against each other, and I'll win. And
I don't think so, man. I'm gonna find the best youth.
But seriously, that's one of the things that we need. You know, we're talking about the 16-year-olds right now and what our academies can do for them. But if we want to change it as a country, if we want to be a soccer nation, it really has to start younger. We have to take it as more of a sport and a path than a hobby until you get to a different sport.
And you know what? Another thing that has to happen is in those youth levels. It's right now. It's let's win this game. You know, 8-year-olds to 11-year-olds. It's all about winning, and that's not what soccer development at those ages should be about.
Right.
It should be about developing your skills, and then winning just kind of happens. And you know, whatever. What's more important is training, the technique, the understanding of the game, because we have a lot of athletes. Josie's an athlete. DeAndre Edlin's an athlete. We don't have guys who, if Arjen Robben walked down the street in America, no one would know. I mean, people would understand that he's fit, but they wouldn't pick him out like, oh, that guy's probably a professional athlete, like they would if, like, you know, offensive lineman or like a power forward walked down the street. You know, it's like you look at those guys and you're like, they probably play sports for a living, or they could.
Robin's actually bald too and looks like really old. So it's
right. He kind of looks like Captain Picard. And so you think of when I look at him, I think, well, maybe he should go read like some literature or go do some like command a spaceship or something.
Yeah.
But it's in soccer, it's not about the athleticism. It is a little bit. That can help. It helps Josie. It helps Romelu Lukaku. It helps DeAndre. But what's more important is that thinking ability, that big head of Michael Bradley's isn't just show. It's like there's a good brain in there that can do soccer shit, and we need to develop that more. And that's where that happens, is in the youth level, is you start thinking about that early.
Yeah.
You start thinking about that tactical stuff instead of the technique so much. The technique is important, but you know, you do that by just learning by doing. The thinking aspect has got to be instilled early, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. One guy who I thought like had that instilled was Freddie Adu, who I always thought was like lined up to be the next big thing, but then he just sort of like disappeared.
I mean, he was 14. What happens with 14? I mean...
Yeah, it was his hobby, and now he's done.
I mean, he played his first professional game when he was 14 years old for DC United, and it was the stupidest thing we could have ever done to him. Because if you look at, like, the U16 World Cups and the U18 World Cups and the players who dominate those, how often do those guys go on and be, like, stars in the Champions League? It's very few, honestly. You know, there are exceptions. Julian Green might be one of them. But when you're good at 18, that doesn't mean you're going to be good when you're 19, or when you're good when you're 20. And that's when you're 14, Jesus Christ. You know, you still have, you can hit a peak. You can be better than all the rest of the 14-year-olds, but that doesn't mean shit. Because all those other 14-year-olds are still, you know, people learn at different curves or whatever. You know, so it's funny. Our physics professor Daniel, Dr. Beatty, likes to talk about people learning on different curves, and how, you know, you peak at different times. People peak at different times. He peaked at 14, and then, you know, his learning went like bloop, 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 and then, you know, other people, they don't peak until they're 17, and everything just clicks.
Yeah.
And for much people, it's much later. I think for me, it was like 2 years ago when I was like, oh, things are starting to make sense now. But then I was embroiled in a thing, and had to run away.
Things happen.
Wow. How can we drop that on the podcast? Embroiled in a...
It was with an Arsenal fan. This is fuck Arsenal. Anyway.
Well, listen, guys, I don't have a ton of time. What else do we need to cover? Are we going to talk league at all? Do we want to keep this to a cup-only podcast?
The thing about the league, I'll say right now, Seattle's going to win the Supporter Shield. That's like a given.
Ooh, all right.
You guys are 10 points ahead of everybody else.
Look, I get shit for saying things like that, but I'm a fanboy, so it's not fair. I like hearing unbiased opinions.
Houston's the worst team in the league, which makes me happy. LA's a borderline playoff team, which also makes me happy. And for reasons I'll go into, but not now, because I think I need more MLS voices to bounce off me and tell me I'm wrong. And everybody who got excited about the World Cup these last 2.5 weeks, go find your local soccer team and watch them. Even if they're they might be MLS, they might be NPSL. I don't care. It'll be fun. There'll probably be an atmosphere, and if there's not, see what you can do to create the kind of atmosphere that you saw at bars, at parks in Chicago. By the way, I hope the Chicago Fire are figuring out some way to capitalize on all of those the people who filled fucking Soldier Field on Tuesday.
Let's talk about that for just 1 second, because we've been just inundated with numbers of Nielsen ratings and Watch ESPN, and none of those are counting the insane viewing parties that we've been seeing.
They only got bigger. They got bigger as the tournament went on. It was crazy.
Yeah, the Seattle one was crazy. Now, it wasn't Soldier Field crazy, but we had them all over the city, and you don't see that. Obviously, there's a ton of people watching the Super Bowl, but they all have their own little mini parties, and there's nothing for basketball or baseball or hockey where there are insane groups of people getting together to watch things like that.
There are exceptions. Chapel Hill, Durham. College basketball, though.
Nobody cares, Ian. Nobody cares.
I care. I'm from North Carolina. Daniel, you should care, too. You're from...
Nobody outside the Research Triangle cares.
Nah.
But seriously, the both number and size of the watch parties that we saw, like you said, as the tournament went on, are amazing, and we absolutely need to capitalize on that. I actually tweeted Matt Doyle and MLS today because we are getting so many questions on the subreddit about, okay, I watched the World Cup, I need more American soccer, what can I do about it? And the two answers that we give them are, go watch your local team and buy MLS Live.
Yep.
And all of those, without a doubt, responded with, okay, we're halfway through the season, why is it full price? And I know that it's still the best deal in sports. I know that because, A, I've bought other sports packages, B, I'm an MLS Live addict, and C, I still think that at half price compared to all the other leagues, it's an amazing deal. But I understand as a brand new fan who's like, wait, it was $65 at the beginning of the year, we're halfway through and it's still $65? That's kind of shitty. So I tweeted them and was like, guys, you got to get either a free week trial or a discounted price happening now. I know that we typically do it after the All-Star break, but that's a month away.
Right.
I mean, there are fans right now that are actually going on Reddit, not just to our soccer, but to our MLS, and saying, I need more of this right now. And we've got to capitalize on those fans, because those are me 4 years ago. I was that guy 4 years ago that was just so psyched and then immediately moved to a city with a playoff team and just everything exploded. And now I'm on a goddamn podcast about it. Like 4 years later, I'm a fanatic. And those are the people that we have to capitalize to change the way that this country looks at it.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's as good a spot as any to sign off.
Should we do an intro?
You know what I was gonna do? You know what I was gonna do as the intro?
What's that?
You asking me what we should do as the intro.
Oh, good. All right, that works for me. You want me to do my Obama impression again?
Oh yeah, do. Maybe next time. It was good in the moment, but if I make you do it, it's gonna sound bad.
It'll be weird. It was good in the moment.
All right. Good night, RMLS. Go US. Hope to see you for a long time. You guys.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Daniel. It was fun.
Yeah, man.
You should come.
Outside perspective is huge.
Yeah, it is, and it was really important now, because it's easy to get caught up in our own little I guess I'll stop the broadcast now. It's easy to